The arena roared like a storm. Each chant, each cry, a wave crashing against the shore. Spotlights bore down on the squared circle, illuminating the lone figure standing at its center. Rhea Ripley, her breath ragged, her chest heaving, raised her arm in defiance. Her knuckles were split, blood painting streaks across her pale skin like war paint. Her signature leather jacket was torn at the seams, but the defiant smirk on her face remained unbroken. The crowd chanted her name, a mixture of admiration and awe, but her mind was elsewhere. She wasn't standing in victory. She was standing in the aftermath of a war that nearly consumed her. Every ache, every bruise, was a testament to battles fought, some in the ring, some in her mind. She turned her gaze to the championship belt lying at her feet. It glistened in the harsh lights, a symbol of everything she had sacrificed to get here. But it wasn't the belt that held her attention. It was the memories, the ghosts of her past, that haunted her now. "You think this is the end?" she whispered, her voice barely audible against the deafening cheers. "No, this is just the beginning." Her eyes scanned the crowd, locking on to a familiar face in the distance. It was fleeting, almost imagined, but it sent a shiver down her spine. The face of someone she once trusted, someone who betrayed her. The shadow of that betrayal lingered in her mind like a storm cloud, threatening to darken her triumph. The blood on her hands wasn't just from tonight's match. It was from every fight, every betrayal, every moment she clawed her way out of the shadows others cast over her. Every punch she landed tonight carried the weight of her struggle. The doubters, the critics, the enemies who told her she'd never make it. As the referee raised her hand in victory, the lights dimmed slightly, focusing entirely on her. A camera zoomed in, capturing the raw emotion etched into her features. For a moment, the cheers faded, replaced by the echoes of her past. "You've always been a fighter." Her father's voice echoed in her mind, from a memory she tried to bury. But fighters aren't invincible, Rhea. Sometimes, the hardest battle is with yourself. Tears welled up in her eyes, though she fought to keep them from falling. She couldn't afford to show weakness. Not here, not now, but inside. She was unraveling. This wasn't just a victory. It was a reckoning with everything she had lost, everything she had endured, and everything she had become. The crowd erupted again as she picked up the belt, holding it high above her head. The weight of it felt heavier than she expected, as though it carried not just gold, but the burden of her journey. She turned slowly, letting the moment sink in, letting the world see her not as a champion, but as a survivor. Her gaze fell on the entrance ramp, where the shadows seemed to dance in the flickering lights. She knew this wasn't over. The battles she had fought to get here were only the beginning. The scars on her body, the bruises on her soul, they were proof that she could withstand anything. But what lay ahead, the image of her standing there, bloody but unbroken, was more than just a snapshot of triumph. It was a testament to resilience, to survival, to the unyielding fire that burned within her. She dropped the mic she'd been clutching, letting the sound echo across the arena, and mouthed 3 words that sent shivers to the crowd: "Bring it on." And as the lights dimmed and the crowd erupted once more, Rhea Ripley turned her back to the ring and began the long walk down the ramp, into the unknown future awaiting her, a future that would test her like never before. The night was quiet in Adelaide, Australia, the stars faintly illuminating the modest suburban streets where young Demi Bennett, the future Rhea Ripley, grew up. Her house wasn't remarkable, a humble home with a weathered fence and a patchy front lawn, but inside those walls, the seeds of greatness were quietly taking root. Demi sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor, her wide eyes glued to the TV screen as a wrestling match unfolded before her. Her room was small, filled with posters of legendary wrestlers. Their larger-than-life personas plastered on her walls, like gods she aspired to emulate. It wasn't just admiration, it was a calling. Watching them throw their bodies into the chaos of the ring, defying pain and gravity, something ignited within her. The roar of the crowd, the resilience of the fighters. It all resonated with her deeply. She wanted that. She needed that. Demi, turn that off and get some sleep. Her mother's voice rang out from the hallway. Yes. Mom, she called back. Her voice tinged with annoyance. But instead of reaching for the remote, she turned the volume down and leaned in closer, her heart racing as the match reached its climax. The next morning, she was out in the backyard, a makeshift ring marked by ropes tied between fence posts. She practiced moves she'd seen the night before, her body awkwardly mimicking the fluid motions of the pros. Each fall onto the grass was met with a grimace, but she got back up, again and again, driven by an unrelenting determination. Her childhood was not without its challenges. Demi was tall for her age, her athletic frame often making her a target for teasing. Kids at school called her giant or freak, their words cutting deeper than she let on. But instead of shrinking, she used their words as fuel, building a mental fortress to shield herself from their taunts. "I'll show them," she muttered to herself one day after an especially cruel encounter, her fists clenched, her jaw set. "I'll show them all." Her family saw glimpses of her resolve, though they didn't always understand it. Her father, a reserved man who worked long hours to support the family, often found her outside practicing moves long after the sun had set. "Demi," he said one evening, leaning against the doorframe with a cup of coffee in hand, "what are you doing out here?" "Training," she replied, wiping sweat from her brow. Her voice was calm but firm, her expression one of pure determination. He chuckled softly, shaking his head. "You're a dreamer, kid, but dreams don't pay the bills." "Not yet," she countered, her eyes blazing with conviction. "But they will." Despite his skepticism, he couldn't help but admire her tenacity. It reminded him of himself when he was younger, chasing a career that never quite materialized. He didn't want her to face the same heartbreak, but he also didn't want to extinguish the fire that burned so brightly within her. School wasn't much of a refuge for Demi. Her teachers saw her as unfocused, her grades slipping as she spent more time daydreaming about the ring than studying. But in PE class, she shone. Her natural athleticism set her apart, earning her grudging respect from her peers. One fateful day, a visiting coach spotted her during a local athletics meet. He was a grizzled veteran of the wrestling world, his sharp eyes scanning the crowd for talent. When Demi took to the field, her raw energy and determination caught his attention immediately. "Who's that?" he asked one of the event organizers, nodding toward her. "Demi Bennett." The organizer replied, "She's good, but a bit rough around the edges." The coach smirked. "Rough edges can be smoothed. It's the fire inside that matters." He approached her after the meet, handing her a card emblazoned with the logo of a local wrestling academy. "You've got potential, kid," he said, his voice gruff but encouraging. "Come by if you're serious about making something of it." She stared at the card, her heart pounding. This was it, a chance to prove herself. But the path ahead wouldn't be easy. Her parents were skeptical when she told them about the offer. "Wrestling? Demi, that's not a career," her mother said, shaking her head. "It is for me," Demi replied firmly, her tone leaving no room for argument. With limited support and a fierce determination, she began attending the academy, balancing grueling training sessions with her schoolwork. The coaches were tough, pushing her to her limits, but she thrived under the pressure. Her first match came sooner than expected, a small, local event with barely a dozen spectators. She was nervous, her heart hammering in her chest as she stepped into the ring. But the moment the bell rang, something clicked. The pain, the struggle, the adrenaline, it all felt right. She wasn't just Demi Bennett anymore. She was Rhea Ripley in the making. From that day forward, her path was clear. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting to prove that dreams could become reality, no matter how impossible they seemed. But as her star began to rise, so too did the challenges. The wrestling world wasn't just about strength and skill, it was about politics, rivalries, and surviving the darker side of the industry. And for Rhea Ripley, the journey was just beginning. Demi's transition into the wrestling world wasn't smooth. It was a baptism by fire. The local wrestling academy where she trained became her second home, a crucible of sweat, bruises, and relentless effort. The ring wasn't just a place to compete. It was where she would forge her identity, one painful session at a time. Her coach, a grizzled veteran named Mick Mad Dog Donovan, was as tough as they came, with a voice like gravel and a demeanor that brooked no nonsense. He had seen countless hopefuls walk through his doors, only to quit when the going got tough. But Demi was different. Again, Mick barked as Demi hit the mat with a loud thud. She winced but got back up, determination etched into every line of her face. "You're too stiff," he growled, pacing the ring. "This isn't a bodybuilding competition. Kid, loosen up. Flow with it. Wrestling's an art as much as it's a fight." "Yes, coach," she muttered, brushing strands of sweat-soaked hair from her face. She adjusted her stance, her muscles screaming in protest, but her resolve unshaken. The first few months were brutal. Demi struggled to find her rhythm, often leaving the gym with more bruises than confidence. Her body ached in ways she hadn't thought possible, and the physical toll began to seep into her mind. But each setback only fueled her resolve. Every fall, every failed move, was another step closer to mastering her craft. The other trainees quickly took notice. Some admired her tenacity. Others saw her as competition. One trainee in particular, a cocky, self-proclaimed prodigy named Ryan, made it his mission to remind her of her place. "You don't belong here," he sneered one day after practice. "This is a man's game." Demi didn't respond. She simply glared at him, her silence more cutting than any retort. But inside, his words stung. They echoed the doubts she tried so hard to suppress. That night, she stayed late, practicing her moves long after everyone else had left. The gym was silent except for the rhythmic sound of her boots hitting the mat. She replayed Ryan's words in her mind, using them as fuel to push herself harder. "You don't belong here," she whispered, mimicking his tone. Then, with a defiant roar, she launched herself off the ropes, executing a perfect dropkick. We'll see about that. Her persistence paid off. Within a year, Demi's progress was undeniable. Her moves were sharp, her presence commanding. Mick began giving her opportunities to participate in local matches, small-scale events where she could test her skills in front of a live audience. Her debut match was a blur of nerves and adrenaline. The crowd was modest, but to Demi, it felt like she was stepping into a packed arena. Her opponent was a seasoned wrestler who underestimated her from the start. But as the match unfolded, Demi's resilience and raw talent shone through. The roar of the crowd as she pinned her opponent was deafening, a sound she would chase for the rest of her career. "You've got the fire, kid," Mick told her after the match, clapping her on the shoulder. "But fire burns out if you don't feed it. Keep working." Demi took his words to heart, throwing herself into her training with even greater intensity. She studied tapes of wrestling legends, mimicking their moves and learning from their mistakes. She honed her persona, experimenting with different looks and styles until she found one that felt authentically her. A fierce, no-nonsense powerhouse with an edge of rebellion. It wasn't long before the small-time matches led to bigger opportunities. A scout from a prominent wrestling promotion noticed her during a regional tournament. Impressed by her charisma and skill, the offer to join their roster was a dream come true, but it came with its own set of challenges. The wrestling world was a shark tank, and Demi quickly learned that talent alone wasn't enough. She faced pushback from veterans who didn't take kindly to newcomers, and the grueling travel schedule left her physically and mentally drained. But through it all, she remained focused, her eyes set firmly on her ultimate goal, the WWE. Her breakthrough came during a high-profile match against a wrestler twice her size and twice as experienced. The odds were stacked against her, and even Mick had his doubts. "Don't let him intimidate you," he warned before the match. "Stick to your game plan. You've got this." The match was brutal, a test of endurance and willpower. Demi took hit after hit, her body screaming for her to quit. But she refused to back down. With the crowd on their feet, she executed a flawless finishing move, pinning her opponent and earning the victory. The win was a turning point. Offers from bigger promotions started pouring in, and soon, Demi found herself on a plane to the United States, ready to chase her dream on the grandest stage of them all. But as her star began to rise, so too did the challenges. The wrestling world was as ruthless as it was glamorous. And Demi quickly discovered that the biggest fights weren't always in the ring. Behind the scenes, alliances were formed and broken. Trust was a rare commodity, and the pressure to succeed was unrelenting. Through it all, Demi, now Rhea Ripley, remained steadfast. The shy, awkward girl from Adelaide had transformed into a force to be reckoned with, her name becoming synonymous with power, resilience, and unapologetic ambition. Yet, as she stood on the precipice of greatness, shadows began to loom on the horizon. The darker side of the industry, the politics, the betrayals, the sacrifices, was waiting to test her in ways she could never have imagined. And for Rhea Ripley, the fight was far from over. The glitz and glamour of the wrestling world had a price, and Rhea Ripley was starting to understand just how steep it could be beneath the bright lights and roaring crowds. The wrestling industry had its shadows, secrets whispered in hallways, alliances made and broken behind closed doors, and a relentless pressure to perform at any cost. Rhea had arrived on the grand stage with high hopes and an unbreakable will. She quickly became a fan favorite, her unrelenting strength and rebellious persona resonating with audiences worldwide. But as her popularity grew, so did the demands on her time, her body, and her mental health. Late nights turned into early mornings, flights from city to city blurred together, hotel rooms feeling less like rest stops and more like temporary holding cells. The constant grind began to take its toll, and cracks started to form in her once unshakable resolve. The first sign of trouble came during a high-profile feud with a veteran wrestler known for his backstage influence. He was a towering figure in the industry, respected by fans but feared by many of his colleagues. He saw Rhea as a threat, an upstart who hadn't paid her dues. "You're getting too big for your boots, Ripley," he sneered one night after a show. His voice was low, his tone laced with condescension. "Maybe it's time someone reminded you who really runs this place." Rhea didn't back down. "If you've got something to say it in the ring," she shot back, her eyes narrowing. The tension escalated, spilling over into their matches. What was supposed to be scripted entertainment turned into something far more personal. Each move, each hit, carried an edge of real animosity, and Rhea began to question who she could trust. The backstage politics were equally brutal. Rumors swirled about her, whispers that she was difficult to work with or that she didn't deserve her spot. She knew where the rumors were coming from, but confronting them directly would only make things worse. Keep your head down and let your work do the talking, Mick advised her over the phone one night. His voice was gruff but reassuring. A lifeline to her past. You're better than this nonsense. But even Mick's advice couldn't prepare her for what came next. During a live pay-per-view event, a scripted betrayal turned into a very real one. Rhea had been set to win a high-stakes match, a victory that would cement her status as a top star. But at the last moment, the outcome was changed without her knowledge, leaving her blindsided and humiliated in front of millions. Backstage, she confronted the decision-makers, her voice shaking with anger. "You blindsided me out there," she said, her fists clenched. "Why?" One of the executives, a smug smile on his face, shrugged. "It's what's best for business. You'll bounce back." But it wasn't just about the loss. It was about the trust that had been shattered. The realization that she was expendable in an industry she had given everything to. The betrayal lit a fire in her. But it also brought out her darker side. She became more aggressive, both in and out of the ring. Her promos, once inspiring, took on a razor-sharp edge. She started calling out her detractors by name, daring them to face her. This newfound intensity resonated with the fans, but it came at a cost. Her relationships with her colleagues grew strained, and the mental toll of constantly being on the defensive began to weigh heavily on her. The final straw came during a grueling overseas tour. Exhausted and running on fumes, Rhea made a critical mistake in the ring, botching a move that could have seriously injured her opponent. The backlash was swift and unforgiving. Social media erupted with criticism, and even her closest allies began to distance themselves. For the first time in her career, Rhea considered walking away. She sat alone in her hotel room, staring at the championship belt that had once been her greatest dream. Now, it felt like a hollow victory, a reminder of everything she had sacrificed. Her phone buzzed with a message from Mick. "You're tougher than this, kid," it read. "But even the toughest fighters need to take a step back sometimes. Don't lose sight of who you are." The words hit her hard. She realized that in her quest to prove herself, she had lost sight of why she had started wrestling in the first place. It wasn't about the fame or the titles. It was about the love of the sport, the joy of connecting with fans, and the thrill of pushing herself to her limits. Determined to find her way back, Rhea took a short hiatus, stepping away from the spotlight to focus on herself. She sought out mentors she trusted, worked on her physical and mental health, and started planning her comeback. But she knew that redemption wouldn't come easy. To truly reclaim her place, she would have to confront her past, mend broken relationships, and prove to herself and the world that she was stronger than ever. The path ahead would be the hardest she'd ever faced. But Rhea Ripley wasn't one to back down from a fight. This time, she wasn't just fighting for her career, she was fighting for her identity, her legacy, and her soul. The hiatus felt both like a relief and a burden. For the first time in years, Rhea Ripley wasn't waking up to the grueling demands of travel schedules, media obligations, or the weight of constantly performing. But the silence brought its own challenges. Without the roar of the crowd or the rhythm of the ring, she felt adrift, questioning who she was beyond the persona she had built. Her days were spent in quiet reflection and physical recovery. Early mornings were dedicated to intense workouts at a secluded gym, away from the public eye. The gym was bare bones, no fancy equipment, just the basics, and an old wrestling ring tucked into the corner. It reminded her of where she had started, stripping away the glitz and bringing her back to the raw essence of the sport. Focus on what you can control, Mick had advised her during one of their calls. His words echoed in her mind as she practiced her moves with precision, correcting every flaw that had crept into her performance over the years. The time away also gave her space to confront the personal demons she had been ignoring. Late at night, she found herself replaying moments she'd rather forget, arguments with colleagues, harsh words said in anger, the feeling of betrayal from those she once trusted. She realized that while she had been quick to blame others for her struggles, she wasn't entirely without fault. "I let the anger take over," she admitted to herself one night, her reflection staring back at her from the darkened window of her apartment. "I stopped being the fighter I wanted to be." As part of her journey, Rhea began reaching out to people she had pushed away. Some conversations were met with skepticism, others with guarded acceptance. But with each call or meeting, she felt a small weight lift off her shoulders. Slowly, she started to rebuild the bridges she had burned. Her comeback was carefully planned. She knew that returning to the ring wasn't just about being physically ready. It was about making a statement. She spent weeks filming vignettes that would air during wrestling broadcasts, teasing her return. The promos were raw and unfiltered, showing a side of her that fans hadn't seen before. In one promo, she stood in the middle of an empty ring, the camera capturing every scar, every line of determination etched into her face. "They said I was finished," she began, her voice low but resolute. "They said I couldn't come back from this, but I've been fighting my entire life. And trust me, I'm just getting started." The fans were hooked. Social media buzzed with anticipation, debates raging over whether Rhea Ripley could reclaim her former glory. Some doubted her ability to rise again, while others rallied behind her, eager to see the fighter they had fallen in love with. Her return match was set for a major pay-per-view event, a high-stakes bout against one of the company's rising stars. The build-up was intense, the narrative framed as a clash between the old guard and the new. But for Rhea, it wasn't about proving herself to her opponent. It was about proving herself to herself. The night of the match, the arena was electric. As her entrance music hit, the crowd erupted in a mix of cheers and chants. She emerged from the smoke, her silhouette sharp and commanding, dressed in her signature leather and studs. She looked every bit the warrior she had always been. But there was something different in her eyes, a calm intensity that spoke of growth and resilience. The match was a masterpiece of storytelling and athleticism. Rhea fought with a renewed sense of purpose, her movements precise and powerful. Her opponent was fierce, pushing her to her limits. But Rhea's experience and unyielding determination carried her through. In the closing moments, as the crowd held its collective breath, Rhea executed her finishing move with flawless precision, pinning her opponent for the victory. The referee's hand hit the mat for the third time, and the arena exploded in cheers. Exhausted but victorious, Rhea knelt in the center of the ring, her chest heaving as tears streamed down her face. She wasn't just celebrating a win. She was celebrating everything it represented: her resilience, her growth, her ability to rise from the ashes. The moment was made even more poignant when several of her former rivals and allies emerged from backstage, clapping and nodding in approval. Among them was Mick, his grizzled face breaking into a rare smile. It was a silent acknowledgement of the journey she had undertaken, the battles she had fought both inside and outside the ring. As the crowd chanted her name, Rhea grabbed a microphone, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. "This isn't just my victory," she said, her gaze sweeping across the arena. "It's proof that no matter how far you fall, no matter how dark it gets, you can always fight your way back. You can always rise." The audience roared, their cheers a testament to her words. In that moment, Rhea Ripley wasn't just a wrestler. She was a symbol of resilience, a beacon for anyone who had ever faced adversity and refused to give up. But even as she basked in the glow of her redemption, Rhea knew the fight wasn't over. Wrestling was her passion, but life had taught her that the real battles often lay beyond the ring. And as she held her arms high in victory, she silently vowed to face whatever came next with the same unyielding spirit that had brought her here. The glow of redemption lingered. But for Rhea Ripley, it wasn't enough to simply reclaim her spot in the wrestling world. She wanted to define it. Her victory had reignited her career, but it also set the stage for a new chapter, cementing her legacy as one of the greatest to ever step foot in the ring. In the months following her return, Rhea embarked on a relentless campaign of dominance, facing and defeating the best the industry had to offer. Her matches weren't just victories. They were statements. Every suplex, every pinfall, was a reminder to the world that she was not just back. She was better than ever. Her persona evolved, blending the rebellious fire that fans adored with a newfound wisdom and humility. She began to use her platform to connect with the audience on a deeper level, sharing glimpses of her personal struggles and triumphs. Her authenticity resonated, turning even her harshest critics into reluctant admirers. One of her most defining moments came during a championship match at a sold-out WrestleMania. Her opponent was a young, hungry wrestler with a meteoric rise, a mirror of Rhea's own journey years ago. The match was billed as a clash of generations, a passing of the torch, or a refusal to let it go. The build-up was electric. Promos highlighted the contrast between the two, the veteran who had seen it all versus the rookie with everything to prove. But Rhea approached the match with a level of respect she hadn't always shown in the past. "I know what it's like to be in her shoes," Rhea said during an interview. "To be hungry, to have everything to prove, that's what makes this match so special. She reminds me of why I started doing this in the first place." The match was a masterpiece, a story told in suplexes and near falls. The crowd was on the edge of their seats as the two women pushed each other to their limits. In the end, Rhea emerged victorious. But instead of celebrating alone, she extended a hand to her opponent, pulling her up and raising her arm in a show of respect. The gesture was met with thunderous applause, cementing Rhea's status not just as a champion but as a leader, a mentor, and a symbol of sportsmanship in an industry often defined by its rivalries. Outside the ring, Rhea's impact was equally profound. She became an advocate for mental health, sharing her own battles with the pressures of fame and the dark moments she had overcome. Her candidness inspired countless fans, many of whom credited her with helping them find their own strength. She also took younger wrestlers under her wing, mentoring them in a way she wished she had been mentored during her early years. Her training sessions were legendary, blending brutal intensity with heartfelt guidance. "You've got to find your fire," she would tell them, echoing the lessons she had learned the hard way. "And when you do, don't let anyone put it out." Her relationships with her peers deepened as well. Rivals turned into allies, and old wounds began to heal. She reached out to the veteran who had once dismissed her, their feud now a distant memory. Over coffee in a quiet cafe, they shared stories and laughs, acknowledging the roles they had played in each other's journeys. The industry began to recognize her not just as a star, but as a legend in the making. Awards and accolades followed, but what mattered most to Rhea was the respect of her peers and the love of her fans. She knew that titles could be lost, but legacy was eternal. As the years went on, Rhea began to think about life beyond the ring. She explored opportunities in acting, her natural charisma and larger-than-life presence, making her a natural fit for the screen. But no matter where her path led, wrestling remained her first love. One day, as she stood backstage, watching a younger wrestler take the spotlight, she felt a sense of pride that she hadn't experienced before. She wasn't just witnessing a match, she was seeing the future of the industry she had helped shape. And in that moment, she realized that her greatest legacy wasn't her championships or her victories. It was the inspiration she had given to others to chase their dreams, to fight their battles, and to rise stronger from every fall. With her head held high and her heart full, Rhea Ripley walked back to the ring one last time, the crowd erupting in cheers. This wasn't a goodbye. It was a celebration of everything she had been, everything she had become, and everything she had inspired others to be. Her legacy was more than a career. It was a testament to resilience, courage, and the unyielding spirit of a fighter. And as the lights dimmed and the crowd roared, Rhea Ripley smiled, knowing that her story had only just begun. For those who followed in her footsteps, the fight would continue. The pinnacle of Rhea Ripley's career was not just about titles or accolades. It was about a fight that would define her legacy forever. The match was dubbed The Reckoning, a clash between Rhea and her fiercest rival, a wrestler who had been a constant thorn in her side for years, Celeste the Conqueror Novak. Celeste was everything Rhea had been fighting against: ruthless, manipulative, and unrelenting in her pursuit of dominance. Their animosity had grown over time, fueled by backstage confrontations, stolen opportunities, and a deeply personal betrayal that Rhea could never forget. This wasn't just a match, it was a reckoning, not only for Rhea's career but for her identity as a fighter. The build-up to the reckoning was unlike anything the industry had seen. Promos highlighted the years of bad blood between the two, their words sharp enough to cut through the roar of the crowd. Celeste mocked Rhea's journey, calling her a fading star clinging to relevance, while Rhea fired back, refusing to let the insults shake her. "You think you've seen the worst of me?" Rhea snarled in one promo, her voice dripping with venom. "You haven't even scratched the surface. Come WrestleMania, I'm going to show you what happens when you push me too far." The night of the match, the atmosphere in the stadium was electric. The sold-out crowd was split, half chanting Rhea's name, the other half rooting for Celeste. The tension was palpable as the two women stood across the ring from each other, the referee barely able to contain their fury during the pre-match stare-down. The bell rang, and the fight began. From the outset, it was clear this wasn't going to be a technical showcase. This was a war. Every move, every strike, was delivered with an intensity that left the audience breathless. Celeste's brute strength clashed with Rhea's relentless resilience, each woman pushing the other to their absolute limit. Midway through the match, the fight spilled out of the ring. They slammed each other into barricades, used chairs and steel steps as weapons, and tore apart the announcer's table in a chaotic frenzy. Blood trickled down Rhea's face, mixing with the sweat and determination that glistened under the bright lights. "You can't beat me," Celeste screamed, holding Rhea by the hair and dragging her toward the steel steps. But Rhea, her body battered yet unyielding, broke free and delivered a spine-shattering suplex onto the steel. The crowd erupted, their cheers deafening as Rhea roared in defiance. The climax of the match came when Celeste attempted her finishing move, a devastating powerbomb from the top rope, but Rhea countered midair, turning the move into a thunderous superplex that shook the ring. Both women lay motionless for a moment, the crowd on their feet, holding their breath. Slowly, Rhea crawled toward Celeste, draping an arm over her rival for the pin. The referee's hand hit the mat once, twice. Celeste kicked out at the last possible second. The crowd erupted, and Rhea's face twisted in a mixture of frustration and determination. She pulled herself to her feet, dragging Celeste with her. With one final surge of energy, Rhea delivered her signature Riptide move, slamming Celeste into the mat with devastating force. The referee dropped to the mat, counting the pin. 1, 2, 3. The bell rang, and the stadium exploded in cheers. Rhea Ripley had won. Exhausted and barely able to stand, Rhea was handed the championship belt, the gold gleaming under the arena lights. Tears streamed down her face as she raised the belt high above her head, the crowd chanting her name in unison. Celeste, defeated but defiant, rolled out of the ring and retreated up the ramp. For a moment, their eyes met, and a silent understanding passed between them. This wasn't just a fight. It was a culmination of everything they had been through. And while Rhea had emerged victorious, the respect between them was undeniable. As the crowd continued to chant, Rhea grabbed a microphone, her voice hoarse but powerful. This isn't just for me," she said, gesturing to the sea of fans. "This is for everyone who's ever been knocked down and told they couldn't get back up. This is for the fighters, the dreamers, and the believers. And I promise you, no matter how hard it gets, no matter how dark it feels, you can always rise." The audience roared, their cheers echoing into the night as Rhea stood tall in the center of the ring. This wasn't just a victory, it was a moment of transcendence, a reminder of why she had fought so hard for so long. And as the lights dimmed and the confetti fell, Rhea Ripley knew that this match, this night, would be remembered as the defining moment of her career. But more than that, it was a testament to her unyielding spirit, a legacy that would inspire generations to come. The chaos of the night had faded, leaving the echoes of the crowd's chants ringing in Rhea Ripley's ears as she sat alone in the locker room. The championship belt lay on the bench beside her, its polished gold reflecting the dim fluorescent lights. Her body was battered and bruised, every muscle screaming in protest. But the pain was overshadowed by the overwhelming sense of accomplishment. Rhea leaned back, staring at the ceiling, her breath steadying. She had done it, not just won the match, but solidified everything she had fought for. Yet, amidst the triumph, a strange calm settled over her. This moment wasn't just about the victory. It was about closure. A knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. It was Mick, her old coach, his grizzled face softened by a rare smile. "You did it, kid," he said, his voice filled with pride. "That was one hell of a match." Rhea smirked, wincing slightly as she adjusted her position. "Took me long enough," he chuckled, stepping inside and taking a seat across from her. "You've come a long way. You know, from that scrappy kid in Adelaide who couldn't take a fall without crying to this," he gestured toward the belt. "You're not just a champion. You're a legend." The weight of his words settled on her. But Rhea shook her head. "I don't feel like a legend. I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it, that all of this was worth it." Mick nodded, his gaze thoughtful. "That's what makes you different. It was never about the fame or the glory for you. It was about the fight, the journey. And that's why people look up to you." After he left, Rhea sat for a while longer, reflecting on the path that had brought her here. The victories, the losses, the betrayals, the moments of doubt, they had all shaped her. She thought about the fans who had supported her, the ones who had believed in her even when she struggled to believe in herself. She thought about the younger wrestlers who now came to her for guidance, seeing in her the mentor she had once longed for. The following weeks were a whirlwind of interviews, media appearances, and celebrations. Everywhere she went, people wanted to talk about her victory, her legacy, but Rhea remained grounded, using her platform to speak about resilience, mental health, and the importance of staying true to oneself. Her story became more than just a wrestling narrative. It became a source of inspiration for anyone facing their own battles. Fans wrote letters, sharing how her journey had helped them find the strength to overcome their struggles. Parents brought their kids to meet her, saying, "You're their hero." For Rhea, those moments meant more than any championship ever could. As time went on, Rhea began to think about the future. She knew she couldn't wrestle forever. And while she still had a few more years left in her, she wanted to leave the industry better than she had found it. She worked to create opportunities for up-and-coming talent, advocating for fairer contracts and better support systems for wrestlers dealing with the pressures of the job. She also explored new passions outside the ring: acting, public speaking, and even writing her memoir. Each endeavor allowed her to share her story in new ways, reaching people who might never have watched a wrestling match but could still be moved by her journey. One day, as she sat on the edge of the ring during a training session with a group of rookies, she watched them spar, their enthusiasm reminding her of her younger self. One of the trainees, a wide-eyed girl with boundless energy, approached her hesitantly. "Miss Ripley," the girl began, her voice trembling slightly. "Do you ever get scared? Like, scared that you won't be good enough?" Rhea smiled, placing a reassuring hand on the girl's shoulder. "All the time," she admitted. "But here's the thing, you don't have to be fearless to be brave. You just have to keep going. Even when you're scared. That's what makes a fighter." The girl nodded, her confidence bolstered by Rhea's words. As the trainees continued their practice, Rhea leaned back, watching with pride and hope for the future. Her legacy wasn't just in the matches she had won or the titles she had held. It was in the lives she had touched, the dreams she had inspired, and the belief she had instilled in others that they, too, could rise from the ashes of their struggles. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the training ring, Rhea Ripley knew that her fight had been worth it, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever dared to dream. Years had passed since Rhea Ripley's last match. The cheers of the crowd, the adrenaline of the ring, and the grueling travel schedule had become cherished memories rather than daily realities. Yet, her impact on the wrestling world and beyond remained as strong as ever. Now in her mid-40s, Rhea stood in the same wrestling gym where she had trained so many rookies, her presence commanding as, always. The room was buzzing with the energy of the next generation of wrestlers, each one eager to prove themselves under her watchful eye. She had transitioned from a performer to a mentor, running her own wrestling academy. The walls of the gym were adorned with framed photos and memorabilia from her career, championship belts, posters from iconic matches, and heartfelt letters from fans. But Rhea never dwelled on the past. She was too focused on the future. One of her top students, a fiery young wrestler named Ava Knight, approached her after a particularly intense training session. Ava was everything Rhea had been at her age: ambitious, determined, and unrelenting. "Coach," Ava began, wiping sweat from her brow. "How did you know? How did you know you'd make it?" Rhea chuckled, her eyes twinkling with a mix of nostalgia and wisdom. "I didn't," she admitted. "I just knew I wanted it more than anything, and I was willing to fight for it. No matter how many times I got knocked down." Ava nodded, absorbing the words like a sponge. "Do you ever miss it? The spotlight? The matches?" Rhea paused, considering the question. "Sometimes," she said honestly. "There's nothing like the feeling of standing in that ring, hearing the crowd, knowing you've given everything you've got. But I've learned that legacy isn't about the moments you spend in the spotlight. It's about the light you leave behind for others." The words hung in the air, resonating not just with Ava but with everyone in the gym who overheard. They knew they were learning from a legend, someone who had faced it all and emerged stronger. As Rhea left the gym that evening, she reflected on her journey. Her name was still spoken with reverence in the wrestling world, not just for her achievements, but for the way she had carried herself with grit, authenticity, and a fierce love for the sport. She had become a symbol of resilience, not just for wrestlers, but for anyone facing their own battles. Walking to her car, she glanced up at the night sky. The stars reminded her of the nights she had spent as a kid in Adelaide, dreaming of a future that had once seemed so far away. She smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. Her phone buzzed with a notification. A highlight reel of her career was trending on social media again. She tapped the video, watching as clips from her most iconic matches played alongside quotes from fans and colleagues. She made us believe in ourselves. She wasn't just a wrestler, she was a warrior. She taught us that it's okay to fall. As long as you get back up. Rhea turned off her phone, tucking it into her jacket pocket. She didn't need the accolades or the reminders of her impact. She felt it every day. In the eyes of the trainees who looked up to her, in the fans who still reached out to share their stories, and in her own heart. Knowing she had stayed true to herself, her legacy was alive and thriving, carried forward by those she had inspired. And as she drove off into the quiet night, the former Rhea Ripley, now simply Demi, knew one thing for certain. The fight was never about winning or losing. It was about rising, again and again, and showing others that they could, too. And in that, she had truly succeeded. Decades after her final match, Rhea Ripley's name had become legendary, not just in the world of wrestling, but in the broader landscape of sports, entertainment, and personal triumphs. Her story was studied, celebrated, and shared as a beacon of inspiration for those who face insurmountable odds. A bronze statue of her stood outside the biggest wrestling arena in the world, her iconic pose immortalized in metal, arms raised high, championship belt in hand, her expression a mixture of defiance and pride. The plaque beneath read, Rhea Ripley, the warrior who never quit, a champion not just in the ring, but in life. On the anniversary of her most iconic victory, a special event was held in her honor. Wrestlers, fans, and industry legends gathered to celebrate her contributions and legacy. The event wasn't just about remembering her career. It was about acknowledging the impact she had on the lives of countless people. Ava Knight, now a multi-time champion and one of the biggest stars in wrestling, took the stage. Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed the deep emotion she felt. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for Rhea Ripley. Ava began. She didn't just teach me how to wrestle. She taught me how to fight for what I believe in, to stand tall in the face of adversity, and to never lose sight of who I am. She didn't just leave a legacy. She lit a fire in all of us. The audience erupted in applause, many of them wiping away tears. Clips from Rhea's career played on a massive screen, her most iconic moments interwoven with interviews where she spoke candidly about her struggles and triumphs. Later that night, a group of young fans gathered around Ava, asking her what it was like to train under Rhea. Ava smiled, her expression softening. She was tough, Ava admitted, but she was fair. She pushed me harder than I thought I could handle because she believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself. That's who she was. She saw the potential in everyone, and she made you see it. 2. Back home in Adelaide, far from the glitz and glamour, Rhea sat on her porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and gold. She had turned down an invitation to attend the event in person, choosing instead to let the new generation shine. Her home was modest, filled with memories of her journey, photos with fans, handwritten letters of thanks, and mementos from her most meaningful matches. The championship belts she had won were displayed not as trophies, but as reminders of the battles she had fought, inside the ring and within herself. A knock at the door broke the quiet. It was a local journalist, nervously holding a notebook and recorder. Ms. Ripley, thank you for seeing me, he said, his voice shaky. I'm working on a piece about your legacy. I wanted to ask, what do you think is the most important lesson your career taught you? Rhea paused, her gaze thoughtful. That's a big question, she said, her Australian accent still as sharp as ever. But if I had to pick one thing, it's this. Life's a fight. You're going to get knocked down. You're going to feel like giving up. But the real test isn't in how hard you hit. It's in how many times you get back up. She smiled, leaning back in her chair. That's what I want people to remember. Not the titles or the matches, but the resilience. The idea that no matter how dark it gets, you can always rise. The journalist nodded, scribbling furiously in his notebook. "Thank you," he said earnestly. "That's exactly what I was hoping to hear." As he left, Rhea turned her attention back to the horizon. The sun had almost disappeared, but the sky was still ablaze with color, a reminder that even at the end of the day, there was still beauty to be found. Her legacy wasn't just in the history books or the accolades. It was in the lives she had touched, the hearts she had inspired, and the fire she had lit in countless souls. And as the stars began to the night sky, Rhea Ripley smiled, knowing that her fight, her story, would burn bright for generations to come. Years passed, and the name Rhea Ripley became more than just a memory. It became a symbol of resilience, strength, and perseverance. Her story was told not only in wrestling circles, but in schools, motivational talks, and even leadership seminars. She had transcended her role as a wrestler to become a global icon of what it meant to rise above challenges and embrace one's true self. The Wrestling Hall of Fame induction ceremony was one of the most anticipated events of the year, and Rhea Ripley was a headline inductee. The arena was packed with fans, fellow wrestlers, and industry legends who had come to honor her. Ava Knight, now a household name and a champion in her own right, was chosen to deliver the induction speech. Standing at the podium, Ava looked out at the sea of faces. Rhea Ripley wasn't just a wrestler. She was a force of nature, a trailblazer, and a mentor to so many of us. She taught us how to fight, not just in the ring but in life. She showed us that falling doesn't define you. Getting back up does. The crowd erupted in applause, their cheers echoing through the arena as Rhea made her way to the stage. Dressed in a sleek black suit, her iconic confidence still radiated through her every step. The years had added a touch of silver to her hair, but her fiery spirit remained unchanged. As she stood at the podium, the crowd quieted, hanging on her every word. "I never thought I'd be here," she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "When I was a kid in Adelaide, all I wanted to do was wrestle. I didn't care about fame or titles. I just wanted to step into that ring and prove to myself that I could do it." She paused, her gaze sweeping over the audience. "But along the way, I learned that this journey wasn't just about me. It was about the people who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. It was about the fans who found strength in my story, the wrestlers I had the honor of mentoring, and the countless individuals who showed me that resilience is a shared experience." The audience cheered, some wiping away tears as Rhea continued. "This honor isn't just mine. It belongs to everyone who has ever fought for something they believed in, to everyone who has fallen and found the courage to rise again. That's what wrestling taught me, and that's the legacy I hope to leave behind." As she held up the Hall of Fame plaque, the crowd erupted into a standing ovation. Chants of "Rhea, Rhea" filled the arena, the sound a reminder of the impact she had made on so many lives. After the ceremony, Rhea returned to her quiet life in Adelaide, now dedicating most of her time to philanthropy. She worked with organizations that supported mental health, youth empowerment, and gender equality, using her platform to amplify voices that often went unheard. Her academy continued to thrive, producing some of the best wrestlers of the next generation. But for Rhea, it was never about creating stars. It was about creating individuals who understood the value of perseverance, respect, and self-belief. One day, as she stood in her gym watching a group of trainees practice, a young girl approached her hesitantly. The girl held a crumpled piece of paper, a drawing of Rhea holding the championship belt. "I drew this for you," the girl said shyly, her eyes wide with admiration. "You're my hero." Rhea knelt down, taking the drawing and smiling warmly. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft. "But you know what? You're a hero, too. Never forget that." The girl beamed, clutching her hands together as Rhea patted her shoulder. As the years continued to roll by, Rhea Ripley's legacy remained vibrant. Her story was immortalized in books, documentaries, and even a feature film. But more importantly, it lived on in the hearts of those she had inspired. And so, as the sun set on her remarkable life, Rhea Ripley stood as a testament to the power of resilience, the strength of authenticity, and the unyielding spirit of a fighter. Her story was no longer just hers. It belonged to the world, and the world was better for it. The years turned into decades, but the impact of Rhea Ripley's journey continued to ripple across generations. Her name became synonymous with resilience, courage, and the power of authenticity. Though her time in the spotlight had long passed, her story remained a cornerstone of inspiration for those who faced their own battles. In schools around the world, her autobiography, Unbroken, the Rhea Ripley story, was part of the curriculum in courses on perseverance and overcoming adversity. The book delved into her struggles, triumphs, and lessons learned, connecting with readers on a deeply personal level. Students often wrote essays about how her journey mirrored their own, finding strength in her words to overcome their challenges. The wrestling industry also kept her legacy alive. An annual tournament, the Rhea Ripley Invitational, was established to honor her contributions. It was open to aspiring wrestlers from all walks of life, with a focus on promoting inclusivity and diversity within the sport. Winning the Invitational became one of the highest honors a young wrestler could achieve, symbolizing not just talent, but the grit and determination that Rhea embodied. In her later years, Rhea devoted much of her time to mentoring, speaking, and writing. She traveled the world, sharing her story with audiences of all ages. Her speeches were raw and heartfelt, often leaving the room in tears but also filled with hope. She spoke of the darkest moments of her life and how she found the strength to keep going, always emphasizing the importance of community and self-belief. One of her most memorable appearances came at the United Nations, where she delivered a keynote address on mental health and resilience. Standing before world leaders, she spoke with the same passion and conviction that had defined her wrestling career. "Mental health is not a weakness," she declared, her voice echoing through the grand hall. "It's a battle we all fight, and it's a fight we can win together." Strength isn't just about physical power. It's about the courage to face your fears, to ask for help, and to keep moving forward, no matter how many times you fall. Her words were met with a standing ovation, cementing her influence far beyond the wrestling ring. At home in Adelaide, Rhea lived a quiet life surrounded by family and friends. Her home was a sanctuary, filled with memories of her journey, photos, letters from fans, and the occasional championship belt displayed in a corner. But her most prized possessions were the countless stories of those she had inspired. One day, a young filmmaker approached her with an idea to create a documentary that explored her life and legacy through the eyes of those she had impacted. The project, titled Ripley's Warriors, featured interviews with fans, wrestlers, and even those who had once been her fiercest rivals. It became a global sensation, reminding the world of the fire she had sparked in countless hearts. As Rhea watched the premiere of the documentary, surrounded by family, friends, and fans, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Her story had come full circle, and she knew that even though her time on Earth was finite, her legacy would endure. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Rhea sat on her porch, a gentle breeze rustling the trees. A group of neighborhood kids passed by, laughing and playing. One of them wearing a t-shirt with her iconic slogan, "Rise. No matter what." She smiled, her heart full, knowing that her fight, her message, and her legacy had become a part of something much greater than herself. The fire she had kindled burned brightly in the hearts of others, ensuring that the spirit of resilience and strength would never fade. And as the first stars began to twinkle in the evening sky, Rhea Ripley closed her eyes, her soul at peace, her legacy eternal. Rhea Ripley's legacy transcended her physical presence, weaving itself into the fabric of the wrestling world and beyond. Her mantra, "Rise, no matter what," became a global rallying cry, a beacon for anyone facing life's hardships. Though she had retired from public appearances, her influence remained undeniable, felt in every corner of the industry she helped shape. The Rhea Ripley Invitational, now in its 20th year, had grown into a worldwide phenomenon. It was no longer just a wrestling tournament. It was a celebration of perseverance, inclusivity, and the indomitable human spirit. Wrestlers from every continent came to compete, each hoping to etch their name alongside the legend they idolized. Ava Knight, now retired and serving as the lead coach at Rhea's Academy, opened the tournament's milestone event with a heartfelt speech. "We're not just here to honor Rhea Ripley the wrestler," Ava said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "We're here to honor Rhea Ripley the fighter, the mentor, the icon who showed us that no matter how many times life knocks you down, you can always rise." The arena erupted in applause, the crowd chanting Rhea's name as her face appeared on the massive screens above. It was an archival clip from one of her early promos, her voice filled with the fire and determination that had defined her career. Wrestling isn't just about winning. It's about standing up when you're broken, when the odds are against you, and proving to the world and yourself that you're stronger than they ever thought. As the tournament progressed, stories of Rhea's impact continued to unfold. Wrestlers spoke of how her journey had inspired their own, sharing personal anecdotes of watching her matches as kids or meeting her at pivotal moments in their lives. Fans shared their stories too, recounting how her message had helped them overcome bullying, mental health struggles, or moments of self-doubt. One wrestler, a young woman from South Africa named Lila Nyoka, stood out in particular. She had risen to the ranks of the tournament with a combination of raw talent, resilience, and a deep respect for the path Rhea had blazed. In the final match of the Invitational, Lila faced off against a seasoned competitor twice her size. The bout was grueling, pushing both wrestlers to their limits. But in the end, Lila emerged victorious, collapsing to her knees in the center of the ring as the crowd roared. As the championship trophy was handed to her, Lila took the microphone, tears streaming down her face. "This isn't just my victory," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "This is for everyone who's ever felt like they couldn't make it. Rhea taught me that strength isn't just about muscles. It's about heart. And tonight, I hope I made her proud." Watching the broadcast from her quiet home in Adelaide, Rhea couldn't help but smile. She saw herself in Lila, the fire, the determination, the drive to inspire others. It was a reminder that her legacy wasn't just about what she had achieved. It was about what she had passed on. That night, as the stars illuminated the Australian sky, Rhea wrote a letter to Lila, one of the rare personal gestures she still made for select individuals. In it, she congratulated the young wrestler, offering words of encouragement and wisdom. "Never let the fire inside you burn out," she wrote. "The ring is just a beginning. Your true strength lies in how you use your platform to lift others up. Keep fighting, keep inspiring, and always remember, rise. No matter what." The letter was framed and hung in Lila's home, a treasured artifact that reminded her of the woman who had shaped her dreams. As the years continued to pass, Rhea Ripley's name became more than a legend. It became a movement. Her life story, her battles, and her triumphs were immortalized in films, books, and documentaries, ensuring that her spirit would live on in the hearts of generations to come. And though Rhea eventually left this world, her fire never dimmed. It burned brightly in the lives of those she had touched, a perpetual flame of resilience and hope. For Rhea Ripley, the fight was over, but the legacy she left behind would rise forever. Long after Rhea Ripley's departure from the physical world, her legacy blossomed into something greater than even she could have imagined. She became a symbol not just for wrestling, but for human endurance and the pursuit of one's dreams. Her name lived on as an emblem of strength, courage, and the relentless fight to rise above adversity. The Rise, no matter what, foundation was established by Ava Knight and a group of Rhea's closest. Confidants, focused on mental health, youth empowerment, and creating equal opportunities in sports. The foundation became a global force for good. It funded scholarships for underprivileged athletes, built community sports facilities, and provided mental health resources to those in need. Each year, the foundation held Ripley Day, a celebration of resilience and inclusivity. The event attracted millions, with activities ranging from wrestling exhibitions to motivational talks inspired by Rhea's journey. Proceeds from the event supported grassroots wrestling programs and mental health initiatives, keeping Rhea's spirit alive in the hearts of countless individuals. In classrooms around the world, Rhea's life story became a staple of motivational curricula. Teachers used her autobiography and documentaries to inspire students, encouraging them to overcome obstacles and chase their dreams. Her story resonated with people from all walks of life. From young athletes to professionals seeking purpose in their careers, Ava Knight often toured schools and universities. Speaking about her time under Rhea's mentorship, one of her favorite anecdotes was about Rhea's insistence on embracing failure. She used to tell me, "If you're not falling, you're not trying hard enough." That's the kind of person she was. She didn't just accept failure. She celebrated it as part of the process. The Rhea Ripley Academy of Wrestling and Resilience continued to thrive, producing champions who carried her values into the ring. The Academy wasn't just about creating great wrestlers. It was about nurturing great people. Trainees were taught not only the art of wrestling, but also the importance of humility, empathy, and perseverance. One of the Academy's standout graduates, a charismatic wrestler named Kai Tanaka, credited Rhea's teachings with shaping his career. During his Hall of Fame speech, he held up one of Rhea's famous quotes: "Strength isn't about never breaking. It's about always rebuilding." A grand museum dedicated to Rhea's life and career opened in Adelaide, attracting visitors from across the globe. The exhibits range from her early days as a scrappy kid in a backyard ring to her iconic WrestleMania victories. Fans marveled at her memorabilia, but what drew them most were the handwritten notes, letters, and journal entries that revealed her inner thoughts and struggles. One exhibit, titled "The Fire Within," featured an interactive display where visitors could write messages about their own battles and how Rhea's story had inspired them. Thousands of notes filled the walls, creating a living testament to the impact she had made. In her later years, Rhea had written a final message, sealed in a letter to be revealed on the 50th anniversary of her most iconic WrestleMania victory. When the day arrived, the world tuned in as Ava Knight read the letter aloud at a massive global broadcast event. "Dear Warriors," the letter began. "If you're reading this, it means my story has lived on longer than I ever dreamed. But this isn't about me. It's about you. Every one of you has a fight inside you, a fire that can't be extinguished. Protect it, feed it, and let it guide you. Remember, life isn't about never falling. It's about rising. Every single time, the broadcast ended with a montage of her most iconic moments, set to the roar of the crowd chanting her name. Across the globe, millions stood, applauding a woman who had shown them that no dream was too big, no obstacle too great. And as the stars filled the night sky, one thing was certain. Rhea Ripley's legacy wasn't just etched in history. It was alive in every soul that dared to rise. As the decades continued to roll forward, Rhea Ripley's legacy evolved from being a story of one woman's triumphs to a universal anthem for human resilience. Her impact extended far beyond the wrestling ring, weaving itself into the lives of those who found strength in her journey and carrying forward her spirit through new generations. The Rise. No matter what, Foundation grew into one of the largest global humanitarian organizations, touching millions of lives annually. Its programs expanded to include scholarships, mentorship opportunities, and mental health support, reaching into remote corners of the world. One of its flagship initiatives, the Ripley Resilience Grant, became a lifeline for athletes, artists, and dreamers who face obstacles in achieving their goals. The grant came with a mentorship program, pairing recipients with individuals who could guide them toward their dreams. At the heart of the Foundation's work was its annual Rhea Ripley Resilience Summit, where thought leaders, athletes, and changemakers gathered to discuss the power of perseverance. The summit's keynote was always delivered by someone whose life had been profoundly shaped by Rhea's influence. Ava Knight, now a revered figure in her own right, took on the mantle of spreading Rhea's message. As the head of the Academy and a global ambassador for the Foundation, Ava ensured that Rhea's principles were carried forward. She published her own book, Fighting with Fire, Lessons from Rhea Ripley, which detailed the wisdom Rhea had imparted during their time together. The book became a bestseller, used in leadership programs and self-help courses around the globe. Ava's tireless dedication inspired others to take up the torch, creating a ripple effect of resilience and determination that reached far beyond wrestling. The Rhea Ripley Academy of Wrestling and Resilience became a beacon for athletes from all walks of life. No longer just a wrestling school, it was a hub for personal growth, creativity, and empowerment. Graduates left not only as skilled athletes, but as compassionate leaders equipped to make a difference in their communities. The Academy's motto, "Strength in Every Step," was engraved above its entrance, a reminder of Rhea's philosophy that progress, no matter how small, was always worth celebrating. Hollywood took notice of Rhea's story, producing an epic biographical film titled Rising Ripley. The film, starring an up-and-coming Australian actress, captured Rhea's journey with breathtaking authenticity. It was lauded for its raw depiction of her struggles and triumphs, earning accolades and drawing new audiences to her story. Fans around the world watched the film, many leaving theaters inspired to face their own challenges with newfound courage. The movie's tagline, "Fall, Rise, Repeat," became a global mantra. The ultimate testament to Rhea's legacy came in the form of those she inspired. Wrestlers who grew up idolizing her carried her principles into the ring, embodying her spirit of authenticity and resilience. Her name was invoked in locker rooms as a reminder that greatness came from within, not just from victories. In a small-town gym halfway across the world, a young wrestler prepared for her first professional match, clutching a dog-eared copy of Unbroken, the Rhea Ripley story. She whispered Rhea's famous words to herself, "Life's a fight. Get up and keep fighting." As she stepped into the ring, the crowd roared, their cheers echoing the spirit of the woman who had paved the way. Though Rhea Ripley's physical presence was no longer in the world, her influence burned brighter than ever. Her life had shown that resilience wasn't just about enduring pain or overcoming obstacles. It was about lighting a path for others to follow. Her story became more than a tale of triumph. It became a part of the world's collective consciousness, a reminder that no matter how many times life knocks you down, you can always rise. And as generations looked to her for strength, Rhea Ripley's legacy proved one undeniable truth. Some fires never go out, they just spread, illuminating the world for those who dare to dream. Rhea Ripley's legacy transformed into an eternal emblem of strength, courage, and perseverance. Her name transcended the wrestling world, becoming synonymous with the fight to overcome life's greatest challenges. With every passing year, her impact only grew, touching the lives of people far beyond her original audience. To honor her enduring influence, the Rhea Ripley Center for Resilience was established in Adelaide. This state-of-the-art facility combined mental health resources, physical training programs, and life coaching under one roof. It wasn't just for athletes. It welcomed anyone who needed support, from young dreamers to seasoned professionals struggling with burnout. The center's motto, "Rise Together," emphasized the collective strength of community. People from all over the world traveled to Adelaide to participate in workshops and seminars, sharing their stories and drawing inspiration from one another. The iconic phrase, "Rise, no matter what," became a universal rallying cry. Merchandise, motivational posters, and even tattoos bore the words, reminding people to keep pushing forward. In moments of hardship, the mantra became a beacon of hope for millions. Global events, from marathons to mental health awareness campaigns, adopted Rhea's slogan, further embedding her legacy into the cultural fabric. Her image, fists raised in triumph, was immortalized in murals and statues, her presence larger than life. The wrestlers who came after Rhea carried her flame into the future. Many credited her story for giving them the courage to pursue their dreams. These athletes, spanning generations and continents, spoke openly about how her journey inspired them to embrace their vulnerabilities and channel them into strength. The Rhea Ripley Invitational, now a global tradition, became the most prestigious event in wrestling. Its winners were celebrated not just for their skill, but for embodying the spirit of resilience that Rhea championed. In the world's largest wrestling hall of fame, an entire wing was dedicated to Rhea Ripley. Interactive exhibits allowed visitors to experience her career and journey, from her humble beginnings in Adelaide to her groundbreaking matches and her transformative mentorships. Holographic displays brought her most iconic moments to life, allowing fans new and old to relive the electrifying moments that defined her career. Her voice, strong and unwavering, echoed through the halls. No matter where you come from or what you face, you have the power to rise. A century after her iconic WrestleMania victory, the wrestling world came together for a grand centennial celebration of Rhea Ripley's legacy. The event, held in the same arena where she cemented her status as a legend, was a spectacle of gratitude and remembrance. Wrestlers from every corner of the globe competed in her honor, sharing personal stories of how her journey had shaped their own. Fans of all ages filled the stands, some too young to have witnessed her career, but deeply inspired by the mythos that surrounded her. The main event of the night was a tribute match, featuring the current champions of the sport. As the match ended, the arena went dark, and a spotlight illuminated the center of the ring. A holographic image of Rhea appeared, her iconic smirk sending chills through the crowd. Her voice echoed, "The fight is never over. Keep rising, and make every step count." The audience erupted into cheers, their voices merging into a thunderous chant. Rhea, Rhea, Rhea. Rhea Ripley's story became more than a tale of one woman's strength. It became a testament to the human spirit. Her life's work inspired countless individuals to believe in their potential, to embrace their struggles, and to rise above them. Generations would continue to tell her story, finding strength in her words and power in her journey. And as the world turned, One thing was certain. Rhea Ripley was not just a name, not just a wrestler, but a symbol of what it meant to rise, no matter what. Her legacy was eternal, her flame unextinguishable, her impact infinite. The essence of Rhea Ripley had become woven into the tapestry of time itself, an eternal reminder of what it meant to overcome adversity and inspire greatness. Her story, now immortalized in countless mediums, was no longer just history, it was mythology, a narrative that transcended boundaries, generations, and cultures. A century after her rise to fame, the world declared March 20th, Rhea Ripley's birthday, Global Resilience Day, celebrated in over 100 countries. The day became a call to action for individuals to reflect on their struggles and triumphs while supporting one another. Events held on this day range from charity wrestling matches to community-driven acts of kindness. The tradition of reading from her autobiography, Unbroken, in schools and public spaces became a universal practice, with her words serving as a guiding light for those seeking strength. As technology advanced, her story was reimagined in immersive formats. Virtual reality experiences allowed people to step into pivotal moments of her life, training in her backyard ring in Adelaide, standing victorious at WrestleMania, and delivering her powerful speeches about resilience. The Rhea Ripley Universe, a globally popular series of interactive experiences, gave users the chance to walk alongside her, feeling her struggles and triumphs as if they were their own. Millions participated, finding new layers of connection to her journey. Rhea's influence birthed a new generation of leaders, athletes, and visionaries. The graduates of the Rhea Ripley Academy of Wrestling and Resilience became known as the Flamekeepers, individuals who carried her spirit into every field they pursued. These graduates were not just wrestlers, they were doctors, teachers, artists, and activists, each driven by her ethos of perseverance and empowerment. One of the most famous Flamekeepers, a young climate activist named Mira Jane, credited Rhea's teachings with giving her the courage to address the United Nations. In her speech, she quoted Rhea's mantra, "Strength isn't just surviving, it's thriving against the odds." Even in her physical absence, Rhea's presence was felt everywhere. Holographic memorials of her stood in major cities, where visitors could hear her voice and be inspired by her journey. One particular monument, the Eternal Flame, was constructed in her hometown of Adelaide, a beacon of light that never dimmed. It symbolized the enduring strength she represented. In a gesture of unity, a smaller replica of the Eternal Flame was placed in every country, creating a network of lights that burn for resilience and hope. Families gathered around these flames to share stories, draw inspiration, and honor their own struggles and victories. A letter written by Rhea during her final days was discovered and shared globally on the 150th anniversary of her iconic WrestleMania victory. Addressed to the Warriors of Tomorrow, it resonated deeply across the ages. To those who fight the quiet battles, to those who rise after every fall, and to those who dare to dream, know this: you are not alone. Every step you take toward your goals, no matter how small, is a step toward greatness. The fight never ends, but neither does your strength. Keep rising, always, with love and fire. Rhea. The letter ignited a resurgence of her message, reminding the world that resilience was not an individual act, but a collective force. As the centuries passed, Rhea Ripley's legacy became timeless. Her story continued to be shared, evolving into a universal symbol of hope and strength. Her mantra, "Rise, no matter what," became an immortal creed, spoken in moments of struggle and triumph alike. In every gym where a young athlete trained, in every classroom where a dreamer dared to believe, and in every heart that faced adversity, Her spirit lived on. Rhea Ripley was no longer just a name or a story. She was an idea, a force, an eternal flame that burned in the souls of those who refused to give up. And as long as there were people willing to rise, her legacy would shine forever.